we're going to call to order the Finance Committee. The first item on the agenda is the audit presentation.
Council President, Mayor, City Council, every year the city does the year state annual financial report, and the state requires us that our report be independently audited by a team of auditors, of independent auditors. And we have to pay our independent auditors who did our auditing, is Kuzak and Company. Ask them to come financials for you to let give you some information. Ask Jim Kuzak to come up and.
And just our job as the external auditors is to make sure your financial statements are stated, make sure systems is placed, good systems, and we go spend the better part on the site for accountants. Our focus initially is on your internal control system, and then we flip to the year-end extended request list, and they do an excellent job. Liz, Tony, everyone in your city does best to be prepared for the audit. So please report. Our report is unmodified on the financial statements. The city started gathering some information on fixed assets, which is the only modification to the report. If you look at pages 1 to 8, which is called Manager's Discussion, this year is compared to budget. That's an excellent read if you have a chance to look over that. That provide a lot of financial information. The main pages 11 to 14, and just so you know, all the operating funds operated at a surplus, except the golf fund had a very small, but that was utilizing over $100,000 of reserves for needed expenditures. If you factor, they actually operated at the general fund produced a 1% surplus. That was accomplished was the revenues exceeded $3.9 million, and the expenditures were less than budget by 3%. There were better property tax collections, and if you compare 2018, the revenues were $2.9 million higher, but your expenditures were 2018 than they were in 2017. Board expenditure savings throughout. Management also does very good reserves, future needs, those reserves as needed. An ATF reserve that was established in the past that we utilize. You also increase your bonded, you would increase your reserve because we had a very large premium on the bond anticipated was borrowed, and that's required to put back into the bonded reserve. In all funds, you're able to increase your capital reserves, again, for needed future expenditures and needed issues. So that there are two things. You have the funds available should a need arise, and secondly, you no longer are borrowing as much for the smaller projects. You're actually funding them. And that was by about $1 million projects, North Perry Street, pump station, water improvements, so very important paving projects throughout the city. You actually that by $3.3 million, so you had principal reduction. One thing you'll notice in these financial statements is there are liabilities. One is your net share of the PRS and ERS system obligation. A couple years ago, I made an accounting change where you have to report your percentage of the state's underfunding areas. So your percentage did go down by almost 9%. Is the postal ability, and this year they had an accounting change that required you to go full accrual with the full amount, and that that is up to $276 million, no, $251 million, I'm sorry, required a prior period restatement. So that's basically the net present value obligation, any post-employment benefit liabilities under. You are on a pay-as-you-go basis, so you budget and you insurance component, but this is just a liability that shows what the net value would be if you closed. You won't do, obviously. Footnotes and information, additional information for the financial statement. Those start at page 15 and they run to page your entire document on your basic financial statements. And then the single audit, which we're required to do a substantial amount of program monies. This year it was $8.9 million. In that area, for the various grants, and we have to test those on a rotational basis. Same program every year, we have to identify what your major programs are, major programs. And in all our findings throughout this, no reports, we had one. I call it a housekeeping comment. From an accounting standpoint, from our independent opinion, you systems, you got excellent people. They do a very good job preparing for our audit. It makes our life a lot easier. You can rely on the amounts that you see in these financial statements. I want to thank Tony, Liz, and because it's a big project and we couldn't pull it off without them. So with that, answer any questions.
So, that there's been changes. Do you anticipate there's any more changes in the requirement and how?
No, I don't.
At
this point. Yeah, that was the last one. You never know. You can't. The last major one that's going to have done.
Second by Mr. Mayor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item on the 2019.
Yes, you're going to recess, yes.
I get a motion to recess. By Mr. Mayor. All in favor?
Thank you. All right, so we'll go to government options first.
So they call the order government.
I got it.
And first item up is
the applications for the 2019-2020 federal fiscal year funding were reviewed and recommendations were made as part of the proposed action plan. It's been available for public comment, which is 23rd, and it will end on May 23rd. We're calling for a final on Wednesday, May 29th in the City Council chambers, which will be a regular scheduled meeting to adopt the proposed action plan.
Great. So, a couple of questions. In the for the first allocation to the community loan fund, it was reduced by $10,000 simply because in that less available, or that's for the community economic development in Schenectady satellite office.
Yeah, our overall application for the year went down this year, so that falls within.
And then also in the next section, Solutions grant, Bethesda was reduced by 10,000, was increased by 3,800. So I just wanted to know, like, the reasoning behind that adjustment?
With one of the programs that they were administering.
Okay.
And we just ran into issues with the eligibility for that program. So that was kind of the reason why we had to readjust what we were funding for that and how that was working.
Yeah. Because I noticed that it was, okay, salary and fringe. No.
Just trying to open this up.
It was for the homeless housing and eviction prevention. Under G portion.
Since 5,000.
$5,000 reduction, yeah.
Yeah, and again, a lot because of the decrease in funding we got this year. But I know the one program that doesn't reevaluated.
And then assistance recommendation. It looks pot of money is up about 28,000 plus, but yet we reduced by $33,000, and that's again a rental assistance program. So I don't know if there was specific reasoning. I asked my colleagues to consider reallocating, but I wanted to hear from you first as to how that decision was made.
Yeah, I mean, given the projected merge between BNI and Community Land Trust, we really wanted to support some of the projects they were putting. We really think that that's going to have a high impact. And again, just in terms of Bethesda House, this tenant-based rental assistance, that we just ran into issues, and maybe Dan.
Yeah, well, so we also moved, we moved some money from CDG. Assist homeowners to get on our agreement. So that's part of the reason for the increase for the better neighborhoods. It really supports the effort to kind of improve the overall conditions of the houses. And as for the Bethesda House Homeless and Rental Assistance Program, that's more of an ESG sort of program than a home program. So we have, it kind of falls in a gray area, but it's actually allowable under, so we're just evaluating how we can restructure the program to do.
But it's historically it's been in home money.
Yeah, and they are monitoring this summer, and she questioned the program a little bit. So we them to redesign the program so it better fits with the guidelines.
Okay. Because I'm very, I hear from everybody else too, but $33,000 and increasing another by 100 bit disproportionate to me. So good thing to discuss. And then my last question before I open it up is.
Can you just question
Yeah.
that?
Absolutely.
So how successful is this program? I mean, how many folks are they reaching out to? What are the numbers of participants that is actually making contact with?
I'm not sure. I can't my head what they're doing. Basically, what it is they're providing. You know, people are getting ready to be evicted, and they're kind of more meant for long-term home.
Yeah,
sort of
it's exactly.
or rehabs, home, new programs. New tenant-based rental assistance, but that's more supposed to be long-term.
But again, you don't know the numbers of.
We could get that the quarterly reports and stuff, but it's not something that we know off the top of our head. So I'd be happy to provide the info.
Yeah.
I would say it's a month.
A month.
But I just feel like if we're money for them, and it's not funded them, we're funding them, or we're not. You know, and that's.
Yeah, I think we're just restructure certain priorities about what's effective use of home funds and where, you know, really goes. And then, like Dan said, considering our monitoring last year, I mean, those are the same questions that HUD is asking. So we really need to adjust our approach with some of these things, just based on, you know, just based on, that we get objectives.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I get that. It's just that if we're funding them, we're funding them, right? So we have to decide whether we should be funding them, not just necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we definitely didn't want to just eliminate completely, but we did, communicate. Yeah.
And we also did last year, I know last year we allocated $75,000, that was a boost from previous year. They were $30,000 to $50,000 range. So this year is more in the past.
And last year we had the increase in funding, so that's another reason.
So around that, did they spend the entire city funds, so what we gave them last year, so they?
Everybody's needing the money with the home funding.
We recruit some people.
Yes.
Question is with regard to the we cut them by $5,000, and it seems like to me,
Actually, that we updated that, I thought.
Oh, yeah, no.
We're funding them. I think it was shown here as 15, but in the final proposal, I don't know why it still says that there, but we're funding them the 20,000, same as we did last year.
Where did the 5 come from? Where did you take away the $5,000?
Probably the demo funds.
okay. Questions? Yes.
The electricity barn and the workforce development, is it specific, like who they have to work with in terms of these funds that's coming out of CDBG? Is there a certain income?
Yes, has to be to the benefit of local.
So anyone that they help in that category?
It might be, I don't know if it's 100%.
51% of
That's the requirement,
Right.
but typically,
yeah, it would be, we would do more.
So 51% must.
that's right. Yeah, that's the HUD minimum requirement. But we typically, through programs like this, percentage does that.
Well,
It's not. Vote on this now. We're done. Public hearings then, correct?
Yep.
That's
Yep.
what I'm saying, we done all the public hearings. I compliment you because I did go to a couple of phenomenal job engagement communities, so, you did your job, so I appreciate that.
Can we make recommendations or?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, personally, I would like to see some back into the FESDA house. Important need in our community, and again, 33 and can add 128 somewhere else. I just feel it's disproportionate.
Yeah, and I agree, Jonathan. I was hoping, that it's $33,000, I was hoping maybe split that difference between the two programs, the one and the one that got 150,000.
Well, the 100,000.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's got to come out of the home line.
The monitor allocation, we're not meeting the criteria that HUD set forth. Put the money back there. They continue to serve a population that doesn't meet the criteria where the objectives are not the same. In fact, we may have with local funds.
But my point is, then how do we have any money there at all if the monitor is saying it doesn't meet the criteria?
Well, some of it.
Well, we're working on restructuring first, and if they can't restructure it the proper way, then we will obviously reallocate that to other programs.
Right.
So we're waiting for them to get back to us on how to fix the issue. In the meantime, another much better execute on these.
If they can write the program, then now they're out of the opportunity to get the funding and important need, so if they can't, then fund it as I just, I I maintain concern that cutting 33,000, if they can write the program and they last year, and we're talking about homelessness, and we all know it's. Did you have any other picture? Mr. Collins?
When were they notified about this issue with Bethesda House?
You know, it's pretty mad. I mean,
Getting something redone.
I'm trying to figure out. I haven't got that just in the structure here. That's my knowledge.
So a month with nothing.
That would be good. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do to restructure.
Right, it's about
There should be some
Pretty tough.
communication.
Yes, yeah.
Is there any communication?
Yeah, we're basically just giving them the time they needed to comply with what's needed.
So, is there a possibility, let's say, you can be money there, they can restructure so that when they want it, then we'll give it to them. But if they can't, then we can allocate it, because they're not going to get the money until when?
Right, we don't do to work, and that's why.
All
council vote.
based on the monitoring and what the monitor said. And for me anyway, I'd be interested to see what those monitoring comments look like, and then kind of compare it again. Allocate, what we can allocate out to, and then if they can't meet the criteria,
So to
where did you give?
Staff went back through and then made those
To get them to 60.
so that you were comfortable if they had looking for it, to go back and look at those programs.
So if we could get, that's something you're comfortable with,
Well, Mr. Riggi, I mean, straw poll, I guess.
Mr. Collins? Ms. Burfield? Mr. Riggi?
Project not being able to be completed. I want us to recommit funding, not be able to complete the project. Just to clarify about the DNI, was that the hand that you talked about?
figures this week, but we'll pass it out of committee and we have to vote. With the understanding also that there is an error with regard to Hamilton Hill. He brought up that. So, I will look for the motion to move this. Second, all those in favor? Thank you. And then we have just a placeholder. We review the local law, because we have the public hearing coming up. And then lastly, I do have a ceremonial resolution that isn't on the agenda for the Altamont program, which is also a homeless shelter that operates at 428 Duane Avenue. Been doing some really good work for a number of years, and I'd just like to recognize them at Monday's meeting with a ceremonial resolution. Okay, moved by Ms. Porterfield, second by Mr. Reedy. All in favor? Aye. We're looking for a motion if there's no other business. Operations to adjourn.
Oh, no, hold on. You got to recess because you have the plastic straws.
No, that's.
No, it's just for public hearing. It's just for a public hearing. Just on the agenda as a placeholder.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Are we going to talk about today or no? Or you guys prepared to say anything?
Just there.
Public hearing first.
Simply talk about what you like. Look for a motion moved by Mr. Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Coming up from the mayor with the community choice aggregate presentation.
Tonight, representing the people choice aggregation program that allows communities to collectively purchase gas for residential and small business use to take advantage of the collective buying power to get optimal price. The first one was done in Westchester, been being by the Public Service Commission to look at these options across. We've had some discussions that presentation representatives of Union College and some of the vendors to look at scenarios. And what I would ask the council to do is approach this with an open mind. There's scenarios where the city of Schenectady alone in this, or we could partner with other to, again, do the purchasing. There are, depending on market timing, sometimes get the more advantageous rates. And Mr. Barrios is here tonight. Will give a presentation, kind of a summary of it, outlining the mechanisms for actual implementation. We have to go out and get an agent or, attorney on behalf of whether it's just a collective group of these. So it's a multi-step program where the first portion is the city enabling legislation, which would allow this to go forward. But then it is whether we would do it alone in a good manner, and then who manage it for us, or the manage it internally. But something that we should look at and move forward in some. There really is a substantial advantage in terms of the purchasing of that collective buying, the potential of saving all the residents and small businesses money within the community. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Barrios to give us more detail.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the overview, the introduction. I'll go right into our company and who I am. I partner with Good Energy. Here you see on both screens something called NIMEP, the New York Municipal. So I'm going to go into just quickly the relationship is you know what that is. That's the program the mayor's talking about. And very simple concept of who we are. Then I'm going to go specifically into the details, how to pass the enabling legislation, and what the benefits are for New York Municipal Energy Program, collaboration between two associations in the state of New York, which are towns that represent 950 municipalities, as well as NICOM mayors, over 400 cities, villages as well. So NIMEP itself, quickly, this one is the aggregation of municipal load or municipal accounts, which you all are, most municipalities are doing. I'm here to talk about, I'm going to talk about voice aggregation, but that's one initiative. And then the second initiative is voice aggregation, which is the aggregation residents and small businesses through the passing of local legislation. Has become the seventh country to not common in the United States. A trend from state to state, and New York became the seventh one, the last one, to actually accomplish this through the Public Service Commission and through an administrative ruling. The first program was a pilot program. It's the state of Westchester. We were one of the lead advisors to that, and the community collectively saved about 12% on average. And so, I'm just going to pass this. We, Good Energy, have been doing this throughout the country. We actually are running close to 400 municipalities and municipal programs, CCAs. They have different acronyms, different names. They're called municipal opt-out programs. Basically, the concept is the same. It's aggregating and really bringing in the Costco theory, the bulk purchasing theory. And here in New York State, it's very different than others where you have for your utility a floating rate, right? And it's a deregulated market. So many of you might have what they call an ESCO, a competitive supplier. And if you're on with the utility, you have a fluctuated rate. So that rate changes every single month. So with municipal aggregation or community choice aggregation, you can now aggregate all your homes and go out into the wholesale market, into the markets, and actually procure a fixed budget. So you all are familiar with the utility rates. It's your default utility rate. So if I move into the city of Schenectady, I need to turn on power for my home. I basically go call National Grid, correct? And then I get service. So that's default. You don't even think about it. I need power. I need to run my appliances. You get power. So think of this as a second default rate that's municipally endorsed. That's what you're offering. So everybody, why it's called an opt-out program, is because we're all familiar with the subscription rate, where if you see a magazine, you pull out the card, you fill it out, you send it in, and you get your magazine subscription. That's an opt-in program, right? You've opted into that program. This is an opt-out, where everyone is included automatically, right? All your residents and small businesses, those are eligible accounts. And once they're included, then you have a period of time where you opt out, okay? So you have a second default rate where you can opt out, and you can opt out any time during the term of that program. So you have the same rights as you would if you wanted a utility. You can switch to a different provider, a different ESCO, or you can stay with the municipal offer, the CCA program, or you can go back to the utility. So everybody switched, but it's providing optionality to your residents. You're basically providing a new offering in the market, and that's that municipally endorsed CCA. So that's a concept. I don't know if anybody has any questions on that. Pretty simple concept. So I'm going to go through the process of actually how CCA works and a little bit of background. The Public Service Commission has made the process pretty streamlined, where, I'll give you an example. In other states that we work in, we actually have to write operation and governance plans and implementation plans for every city that we do this for. In New York, they made the process very efficient, where they've approved a CCA administrator. Good Energy, company I work for, is an approved CCA administrator with the Public Service Commission. The implementation plans, the data security plans, and all the enabling petition documents have been approved with our company, so you are basically falling under that umbrella. So all of that is fast-tracked with the Public Service Commission. There's no additional paperwork, so they've essentially set up an umbrella process so that you fall under that, a blanket process. And so we are set up. So, for example, in the slide, the PS filing process has been done. Those generic plans have been approved, and we've been waiting for that for about 2 years. So in January, all the rules have been finalized, data security agreements, have to pull data, all that process. So you're at a good time where we can actually transact and do this. The next step is your simple municipal process, which you all are familiar with. An approval of a resolution or ordinance, the selection of a CCA administrator. Good Energy is a CCA administrator approved, so you would either select us or someone else. Hopefully select us. A local law needs to be passed, so you have to hold a public hearing, and that's, again, your standard municipal process. And then you actually have to do a mandatory 60-day outreach because it is an opt-out program. So one important fact about that is that the administrator, most administrators, our models, Good Energy, we actually pay for all that. So there's no money coming out of the city as far as public outreach. We do partner with your marketing folks and your PR folks, and we certainly would like that. But we pay for a lot of the postcards. If you allow billboards to be put up, I don't know what the local ordinances are. If there's radio spots, all that stuff, whatever the outreach plan, what you need, we pay for that and incorporate that into the cost. The CCA administrator is paid by the individual resident, so it's a small fee in everybody's bill. It's a small percentage. That's less than, way less than 1% or 0.01%. It's very small compared to the overall bill. But that helps pay for all the marketing outreach and any campaigns that you will be doing. So that's key. In the phase 3 portion of the process, after the outreach plan and after you've selected the CCA administrator will run the RFP. So essentially, we'll go out to the largest ESCOs in the country. And the interesting thing about going out to RFP to these ESCOs is those ESCOs do not go after residential customers. In many cases, B-rated or C-rated ESCOs or third-party suppliers, the ones that go after residential are very small players. The larger ones are going after large wholesale or industrial clients or users. So what you've done essentially by aggregating all your residents is you turn them into a wholesale play or an industrial customer, allowing those economies of scale to really capture the most competitive prices in the market. And that's what the mayor was talking about. How do we have this group that we can actually mechanize and actually pull the best prices in the market? And that's how you do it. So what CCA does, it really levels the playing field, and it allows for residents to capture the most competitive when normally on their own they could. An individual doesn't have time to research or really doesn't even have the leverage. A small house is only about 2,000 to 3,000 square feet. Now you've got a buying power of 30 million square feet going out there and utilizing that load. The other thing is if you compare what industrial customers have done over the years with deregulation, about 90% of commercial customers are utilizing the deregulated markets and getting better rates or having a customized product or an energy plan for their businesses. It's the polar opposite with residents. Only about 10 to 20% are utilizing the deregulated market to actually get better prices. And this is a dynamic mechanism that allows them to capture those competitive prices. After the outreach is done, obviously there's going to be migration of data and information, low data, and ultimately there will be savings. I know that in the capital area and National Grid, we're estimating about $100 a year for residents. Now collectively, I mean, individually it doesn't sound that great, but collectively, you're about 65,000 population. I would say about 25,000 households, is that correct? Assessment? 22,000? Okay, so 22,000, simple math is, whether it's 50 or 100, anywhere from 1.5 million to 2.5 million in aggregated or collected savings for the community going back into the community. And so that's a stimulus. That's a little stimulus package that you could offer your residents. So a very, very powerful, easy way to bring in more dollars into your community. I'm going to go into the specifics of how it impacts your bill, and this is really important. It's a very common question with regard to CCA. How does this work? Am I going to get a new bill? Is it going to be the same company that's going to help me? If my tree goes down or if my tree limb, is touching wires, who do I call? You call National Grid. That does not change. It's the same 800 number. The billing entity is National Grid again. The only thing that changes is the supply portion. So in this slide, I talk about two components, the delivery and the supply. Delivery is handled by National Grid. Supply is the financial mechanism. Supply is the actual commodity, and that's the tariff rate that fluctuates every month. That's what we're going to be locking in, and that's the volatility in the market is that supply portion. So if you look at your bill, you're going to see something like this. This is an example of a National Grid bill. And so you see that there's supply service on the top, there's delivery service on the top. So the top portion is what's going to change. But all that stays the same. It basically is going to have the ESCO name, it's going to have your new rate, and it's going to have your savings. So very simple, no change, just call the same 800 number. Any questions? Okay, so that's the kind of the high-end, a little bit of the process there as far as how the bill works. One of the most important things that I want you guys to take away, because I know I don't have that much time, I have about a few more minutes left, but in the latest budget bill that Governor proposed, NIPO was involved and actually put in language that allows CCAs and former CCA to possibly get NIPO power, and they've allotted about 400 megawatts of peak demand. So by forming a CCA, you have the ability to potentially get the lowest price power in the state, which is NIPO. So that's an exciting part of forming a CCA. You also have, there are grants that are available to cities and villages and towns that have issued a CCA, so that's another benefit. NYSERDA is coming up with more money, trying to find more money for municipalities, and if ask NYSERDA, Brad Tito is the head of the CCA program there. You can certainly call him, and he could advise on what kind of grants are coming up. You also can make your community a green community. You can do it two ways. One way to do it is you can actually buy local renewable energy certificates and call the product a green product if it's purchased through the NICAT system. And that's simply by tying a REC to all your kilowatt hours and then making it a New York Green CCA or Community Choice Aggregation. And also you can use local renewable projects to sell either what we call a CDG, Community Distributed Generation, and then you can utilize a community solar project and provide an opt-in program where people can actually add an additional 10% discount to their bill. And the way that would work is that we would assign a particular community solar project, and then those who subscribe to it actually get credits on their utility bill and then pay the developer the difference. So they would get, let's say, $100 discount, and then they would pay the developer $90, getting that 10% discount. And that's done by partnering with developers in the local area who are in the National Grid program. This is some of our outreach that we've done, just examples of outreach that I wanted to share with everybody so that you know that we're doing these programs actively. These are some of our marketing slicks that we put together for other municipalities throughout the country. We create a microsite for you. We actually develop a website that houses all the information, the enabling documents, the contrast, the rates and comparison rates, calculators. We actually develop that for you. Any advertisement that you need in your local website, your municipal website, any banners, we actually have the marketing team that does fantastic work. If you need palm cards given out, postcards, put information set up in your informational rooms here in the municipality, commercials. So we can do an array of PR and marketing and outreach for the municipality that you do not pay for, which is an asset for us. Some more examples, and on that note, I'll also take some Q&A.
Anybody? Or Mr. Mayor, you want any comments first before we do question and answers?
No, and once the council, again, looking to have you move forward to first do the local enabling legislation, which doesn't commit us to a administrator or any supplier, and then just engage in the discussions of do we look to move a loan by the city of Schenectady, or there are other communities in the region that are starting to look at this, and so we put together a collective agreement that may or may not give us a better rate. There's some recommendations in terms you get to a certain point where you get the optimal reduction in the utility rates, and how do we, Schenectady in by itself would be a little bit below that, and how do we package it to look to get the best deal in the market?
That's right. This was, so school wasn't negotiated.
I was wondering the same thing. You know, answered the question. If we were going to partner with someone else, do you have an idea who you would partner with? I mean, do you have any ideas?
There are other communities that are looking at
The same thing.
Bethlehem, Saratoga, like the other towns within Schenectady County.
Ms. Brazel?
So you mentioned the fee being less than 1% in everyone's bill, but I think you attributed that directly to the marketing aspect, correct? Or is that, I mean, is there an agency fee overall for the?
Yes, I mean, there's a set fee that we have, which is on average about a tenth of a penny per kilowatt hour is pretty much, and it's disclosed in our CCA agreements. And that will cover, that's the number we use that we feel comfortable in paying for a lot of the outreach, obviously, you know, including the profits for the CCA administrator. It's not the fees of the ESCO. They have separate ESCOs, and those are not disclosed. Those are wholesale fees. But our fees as a CCA administrator are disclosed, and that's what
It's just that one.
it's just that one fee. There's no additional hourly fees. One thing I would say is that, and this is a common question as far as municipalities go, but what time and effort is what you guys do, and also attorney fees probably is part of the total fees. But those can actually be reimbursed. The Public Service Commission allows you to reimburse those administrative fees.
Okay. And is there a contract involved?
There is a contract, there's two contracts. The contract with the CCA administrator, that would be us, and then also the contract with the ESCO that the CCA administrator has run the bid and selected. So the winning ESCO, that's one contract. There is no contract with the resident specifically.
Right, yeah, got that. And then how, did they run at the same time, and how long are most of the contracts?
Okay, so our CCA administrator runs before the ESCO, obviously. We select the ESCO. And then in most cases, we have extension language in our CCA agreement that just is coterminous to that ESCO agreement plus 1 year. So if the ESCO agreement is 2 years, our CCA administrative agreement basically spells out 1 year post that end term.
And what is the process after the contract is through, as far as
After which
the
contract?
rates and things of that nature? Like, what happens to the rate structure after the contract comes?
Right, so what we do is, once we run the RFP, select the ESCO, and then the contract is fixed, say, for 36 months, 24, 36 months, that's the going average, to answer that question. Usually about a year or 10 months before, we're already looking at pricing, we're already sharing that pricing, and talking to you to say, okay, this is where we think the market. In many cases, we are renewing that agreement about 6 months in advance, so we're not, scrambling, or there's no deadline or anything we're up against. We want to be very proactive in that. We don't want it to be a messy process on the renewal. So in most cases, 6 months in advance, we're already renewing and looking at pricing. If pricing doesn't look good, then people can go back to the utility if they'd like, or the municipality push everybody back to the utility, or we just extend it if there's continued savings compared to the market rates.
Is there any time frame around the opt-out for the resident? Can they opt out at any time?
So the initial opt-out period is 30 days. Then after that, they're switched, and then while they're on contract, they can terminate or they could opt out without penalty at all.
Does that go for the municipality as well? If the municipality decides as a whole to dissolve
stop
the
it
contract,
altogether?
is that something?
Yeah, so our agreement is a 30-day out, so we have a very easy way, because we believe that if we're not providing good service, you guys aren't going to like us, so obviously we tie that in, so we're not afraid of that. You can't cancel an ESCO agreement though. That you cannot do. Those are some set termination language, so you could not do that. You would have to wait for the contract to terminate. Then it's over. Yeah. But because you have a financial hedge there, so they're holding the bag. They're at financial risk.
Yeah.
But with us, I mean, you can.
And at no penalty, correct?
We don't have. No, we don't.
Okay.
We're just consultants.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Ms. Porter?
So with your experience with other municipalities that you're going with, what does it look like, in terms of opt-out? Most people stay with it because it's savings?
Yeah. So we've done obviously close to 400 of these CCAs, and it's different depending on what kind of municipality it is, whether it's a city, the type of demographic, whether it's rural, whether it's suburban, whether it's a metropolitan city. So in most cases, the going rate's about 6 to 8% opt-out total, and the ESCO takes on the risk of that because it's spread thin over the entire community. So it's not a real concern. So what you call spillage or opt-out would be only about 6 to 8%. We've had some anomalies where it's as high as 12, I think we've seen, and as low as 1%. So, but that's the range. 90% are in the program automatically.
So you talk a lot about your marketing and sending things out and people getting things in the mail. But a lot of people just don't even pay attention to that.
Yeah.
So is there any way that you are really, what's that?
Like political.
Coming soon to your neighborhood.
But is there any way that there's more, kind of town hall forums or anything that you really are making sure that that people are really understanding and getting it? Because a flyer can answer some questions, but it's not like someone would be able to speak to you or your representative.
Yeah, so I went back to see some of the different angles that we use. Obviously, local television would be good, a local commercial. That might be the way to go. Newspaper ads, radio spots. Radio spots seem to be really good because they're inexpensive and we can do multiple ads. I think that's, we actually in Illinois had to run a campaign in the primary general election. It was on a ballot. That's how you pass the CCA. Here, you don't have to do that. It's just a resolution and a local law. Well, there, we actually had to set up a ballot initiative committee and campaign for that ballot. And so radio spots were really good to get people to vote, get out and vote, and pass the ballot question. So I think that's very effective. I think that gives you a lot of bang for your buck. Advertisement is key in the local newspaper, and then commercials as well. Any local commercials or news programs, interviews we've done, radio interviews. So we've run the gamut as far as how to do it, and we definitely would want to take guidance and the lead from the municipality. Say, what are the best newspapers? What's the best venue? Are you going to get everybody? Are people going to not going to look at the commercial and not going to look at the billboard and not going to look at the poster? Yeah. Are they going to throw in the garbage and think it happens? But bottom line is that, they're on a default rate that's higher, and so you're just switching them to a better rate, and that's the key. So hopefully, you have the municipal government and the expertise to give them that savings. So.
I have to ask, what was the ratio of yes to no in Illinois?
Oh, kidding me? We killed it. No, it was, we had a lot of close calls, for sure. I mean, I'll admit it. But a lot of it was, you're offering savings to the community. You're giving them a chance to vote. It was a no-brainer. And I think we had, the first go-around was like 200 communities. That was like a 95% success rate on that ballot, on that referendum.
So my question is, we're all talking about Illinois where it's opt-out. What about the other ones where you have to opt in? What are those states?
So the other states are also
opt-out. No, not according to your slide. You had Illinois as the only state that was opting out.
No, so New Jersey is an opt-out state, which we have communities. Massachusetts is an opt-out state. It's a different process. California, And.
Well, go back to your slide, go back to your
Which
slide.
one?
Go out where you have the states on.
Go first.
That's one of my concerns that I truly have on this, how we're gonna get folks that are gonna be automatically enrolled, and right there, that fact, there it is, isn't that it?
Yeah, so this is some examples of our aggregation experience in the municipal world. And Massachusetts, New Jersey, Illinois, and California is where we've had the most success.
So those are opt-in, though.
Those are opt-outs. Those are opt-outs. New Jersey is an
Opt-outs
opt-out.
as
Yes,
well.
yes, opt-outs as well. New York is the seventh state.
Okay, so can you email us this PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
To all of us as
Send it
well?
to Alex.
I appreciate that. And also, the intro letter or card or whatever it is to folks that this is coming or could be coming to the communities. Can we just see copies?
Yeah, the opt-out letters?
Yeah, what you're sending. Actually, the opt-in letter, how do we introduce this to our residents? How do we say what we're doing?
So we're rolling this out to 11 communities right now in New York State, so I will send you actual opt-out letters that have been approved with the Public Service Commission, so you see exactly what it shows the savings, shows the rate, and shows what the customer is actually getting from the supply.
And you're getting, and I'm going to be very honest with you, we're talking less than $9 a month on my electric bill. I don't know, is that so much of the savings that people are really buying into this program for less than $9?
Well, the decision is based on the municipal officials and your leadership here, so it's a matter of looking at collective savings, really, that's the power of it. And, $9 is not a big deal, but $2.5 million is,
And then talking about how other folks are learning about this, I got an email from Michael Tracy Ireland. They're active with the Capital District Community Energy Group, and they have a couple of Union College folks that are actually going around to different organizations. I can forward this email to everybody here. They're coming to our Woodlawn Neighbor Association meeting on June 26th, and then they're also coming to the Schenectady Senior Center to do a presentation as well. So I'll forward this to everybody and kind of see what their folks are doing as well. But yeah, good stuff though, so.
okay, well, right.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Any other questions?
So in terms of the reach out, you don't have the people on the ground like, you've seen people, we've seen people with the clipboard going door to door, you're not.
No, this actually takes that away. In many cases, those, deceptive practices or cold calls, those telemarketers, that stuff doesn't go away, but certainly, if you explain to people or put out press releases that we've done, explain that this municipal opt-out program does not allow you to do anything. If you get a call of anybody saying that it's a municipal program, that's a lie. That's not true. And sometimes that does happen. So no, you will not get those telemarketers. This is not people with clipboards or solicitors passing it on.
All right, any other questions? All right, so what do we do? Bring this back in a couple of weeks, Mr. Mayor, and that's, because I'm not prepared to move this forward.
I'm not asking you to move forward.
Okay.
And again, there's a number of steps where you
That we gotta
decide
take, right.
You don't want to project an image where we don't want to do savings, even though they might be smaller.
Small, yep.
Think about it and come back, and the council has to first adopt enabling legislation. And again, that's generic. It can go to a number of vendors, and that sets up a process by which we can negotiate with other communities or again start to look for an administrator.
Okay, and we can get that information over to us, somebody can do that, right? So we continue to move forward. All right, does that kind of have the consensus here, just to get more information, so we can move forward on this?
Yes.
We're all right?
Yes.
All right, okay, all right, very good. Thank you for coming, thank you. This is.
Don't forget about the knife of power.
Yes. So if we can we just call public service and utilities to order, so our two folks don't have to stay here much longer, so who is public service?
I do.
Thank you.
Call forward public service and utilities. Two items on the agenda. The first one is discussion, tax cap medallions and new legislation. Mr. Riggi.
Spacious couple, so these guys are in charge of this. I know myself and Mr. Coulter received some information that, as we know, with the 10-year rule, the first thing that came up that some of the vendors aren't happy with that, if they understand how much advance notice that they give us. You have to comply within Was it as soon as the legislation passed that it became law, they had to get rid of the cars, or was there anything written into the legislation that gave any kind of time period for them to be in compliance?
The way it's written, it just says that the cars have to be more than 10 years old. So once you delay the implementation of it, then it goes to the meeting. So I have to say.
And so what kind of feedback have you been getting with that?
Yeah, Sergeant Skate has actually talked to them.
Yeah, I've been talking to most of the owners, and the issue we're having is a lot of the owners, most of the cabs are more than 10 years old. So I'm getting calls in my office, and I'm dealing with these people directly. And honestly, I feel bad for them because it kind of came up quickly, and now they have to go out and buy a whole new fleet of cars. Midway, Leela, all her fleet is older than 10 years. Danny's Taxi, who also owns Andy's Taxi, there's 6 cabs, they're all older than 10 years old. So they're asking if they can get a little bit of, extended grace period, but according to the paperwork the meeting lieutenant received, it's been signed. So we're trying to follow the law here. And we told them we didn't open them up. So we said come June, these cars are still on the road. We're going to have to stop them, tow them, take them down, and whole 9 yards. We're not issuing any new medallions to these cabs. So unless we can get a resolution from you guys, because a lot of these companies, they're hurting right now. Gary at Electric City went out and bought 4 new cabs. We're going to go look at them again on Thursday. He has the funds to do that, but a lot of these people don't.
Just to color in a little bit of history, that was actually a change to the original legislation. The original legislation put forth by CDTA was 7 years. And this was at the last meeting, couldn't attend, but I had a meeting with every taxi company in the city, and that was what they asked us for, and we fought really hard to extend that 7 years to 10 years. Now, that being said, it doesn't go without sympathy from me to have to change over your entire fleet, but that discussion happened over the course of 18 months, and it was something, again, that we fought for the council on their behalf. I have no issue with giving them a grace period, but there was a lot of discussion that happened between when this started and when we actually passed the legislation.
The biggest complaint I'm receiving on my end, we're newer to the traffic division. A lot of these companies are telling me they had no idea this was going on. It seems like Gary at Electric City is the only one that kind of knows what's going on. I'm not sure. They're telling me they never received letters, nobody ever called them from the city here. Again, this is what they're saying. So they're kind of like bombarded with this last minute.
Yeah, no, we even had Danny's there that day. But that's that's neither here nor there. It's not, doesn't make me unsympathetic, but it was part of a very long process. I have no issue with putting forth a grace period.
Ms. Reagan?
I don't disagree. It's certainly a long, drawn-out process, but I do think when it was passed, either letters or some communication from the city should have went out to them to tell them as of whatever date it may be, or maybe in hindsight, we should have set a date, give it to June 1st, May 31st, whatever, July 4th, whatever it may be, to be in compliance. Because just to say it passed, now you're not in compliance anymore, that's kind of, getting the bum's rush as far as somebody running a business. So I think we dropped the ball on that one. I'm not going to pass the buck to anybody else. It's obvious that's what happened there, and to say that they have to be in compliance with a short changeable fleet, maybe some of them should be changed, and that's why we're passing this legislation. There's no question about that. But to give them a little time to get in compliance, I don't think is out of the question.
And I agree. Again, we always talk about small business, how important they are to our community, hiring our folks here who reside in the city. And of course, the competition that they have with Uber and Lyft. I mean, that's certainly hurting all our businesses, with the taxi cabs in particular. I have no problem even extending them the additional 60 days if we could, till July 31st. Again, as Vince Regan, let's put a date on this. 30 days is not, you can't work 30 days. All right, 30 days to me is just not enough to buy 6 additional cabs. I mean, if somebody has to buy 6 cabs, how are they gonna come up with that funding in whatever we wanna do, 30 days? But I would try to urge if we could, or even 45 days, something 45, 60 days extension to the companies, again, to become in compliance. And do we hold up their medallions until that point also? That's the other question, right? Because normally it would still be okay if we give them an extension.
Yeah, well, I would hold off till July 31st once they have new cars, so we can inspect them, and then we'll give them 1 year. So we're not going to show new medallions, because at the end, July 31st, we'll just have to bring them back in to look at their cars to ensure that they're newer, 2010 or newer. So I would just give them that window and bring them all in for an inspection.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so let me get clarified. You're saying that the medallions all expire on July 31st, or when
No.
they all have to be
It's actually
inspected?
April.
April.
We do the inspections in April.
Yeah,
This year,
the vendor held up the medallion, so we didn't do the inspections till May, and that's when we started advising the companies of the ordinance that came to effect.
So I personally feel that, we need to give them more than 30 days. I mean,
Watch it 60, right?
yeah, I was gonna say, we should give them, and I don't know how this works with what you have to get done, I was thinking like 6 months. Give them a little bit of breathing room. so
They were
they're
asking
not-
for the rest of the year, and I said, oh, we're talking
The
about
rest of the year.
Well, we can compromise.
Midway's got 8 caps.
Yeah.
To replace 8 caps midway.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big capital expenditure, but I mean, just to tell somebody that they have to replace their entire fleet in 30 days, 45 days, 2 months, I think is a little bit much, so.
And on our end, we inspect these, so we're going to assure you that we go through them. Even if they're 10 years old, some of these cabs actually, the older ones look better than the newer
Yeah.
ones.
So,
Oh, okay.
So again, I'm glad that you got it to the 10-year rule or the 2010 and newer, but some of the cabs that are 2006s are in better shape than the 12s. So I wouldn't go by the year.
no, it was kind of part of the legislation, but my thought is we need to give them a significant amount of time to make sure that they can change that over. And my thought is at least 6 months.
Yeah, I was kind of setting my sights on 6 months too, but to be honest, if they asked for the end of the year, we're almost at 6 at that point. So, in December 31st, I'm perfectly comfortable with it.
I do want to kind of follow up on something you said about some of the older cabs. I mean, I don't know that we can do this now. Some of the older cabs are in better shape. So are people, are these businesses basically having to take cabs out of service that are better than newer ones? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes, because of our legislation.
And again, like Electric City, Gary has some money to buy some cabs. These other companies were on my phone with me crying, and I don't have the money. I felt bad for them. I felt bad for them. But I'm like, you gotta follow the law here, because I'm not gonna be liable, because me and the lieutenants signed off on this. God forbid there's an accident and I'm liable, so we wanna make sure that it's changed, so I can get these, medallions out. They're cooperative, they call me like every day, so, they're trying their best.
Mr. Reagan?
Again, I think when we discussed this a couple of years ago, the age of a car is really subjective. I know people that have new cars that they become beaters within 3 years, and some people, I mentioned my wife's car, a 2002 Pontiac, and it was like brand new. So it all depends on something for a car, actually, or anything else. Is that car safer than the other car? That's up to them on the inspection, make sure that they're passing all the rules. But if we could, let's just talk about the medallion thing, because that's the other issue that's come up. All 60 medallions are accounted for now?
We have 50 right now. Because a lot of these companies are out of business or they don't have as many cabs. So I ordered 50 this year. That's plenty for everybody.
We've only issued 3
We've
at
only
this
issued
point.
3.
So when we have 60 medallions to issue.
60.
Yeah.
That's a cap that we put on the medallions, correct? Yes. So are any available for somebody that wants to open up a business here? That's the question. That's come up.
At least
Central Town and All-Star is still waiting, but until I get approval from you guys, I can't. We were told not to give new medallions out to any new customers.
But there's room for 10 more, is what you're saying.
Yeah, as it stands right now, I mean, we don't know until the end of the inspection period how many cabs are available through each company that we have on our list. I think that question came from a gentleman that called our office manager, Cheryl Harris, and was inquiring about opening up a taxi company. And, she directed them, to the mayor's office, because it's a process to open up a company. You can't just say, I'm going to open up a cab company.
Capital Land went out of business, and they had 13 medallions.
Well, they switched to medical.
Yeah.
Right, they're not, they're not, they switched to medical, so.
If there's a medical that wants to switch to taxis.
Action, right?
Yeah, try it for 2 years. So can we make sure that these folks are notified that we're extending? Does it come from your office or the mayor's office, or how do these cab companies get notified that we're gonna possibly extend to the end of the year? I guess that's kind of what our consensus is here at this point, but I think notification is important to these companies, right?
And where does that come from?
It can come from, well, whoever you say needs to come from in the legislation, or whoever the mayor directs to do it. If you don't specify, a certain person to be responsible for it, and we can draft it however you'd like. Just one thing I would make a note of, because this is what we tell landlords in town and everything else. If you're in a business, you're responsible to know the regulations that affect your business. And it's not like these rules came out of nowhere. This was a state law that was passed and signed by the governor that empowered CDTA to draft these regulations for all the municipalities in the capital region. And it was publicly out there for a long time, and you guys did make some changes to it. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, it's certainly in your discretion to change the legislation however you want. It's just we're getting one side of the story where everyone's saying, hey, this is unfair, we didn't know about this. Well, if anybody was paying attention, this was out there for a long time and it could have been budgeted for. So again, proceed however you want. I'm not telling you what you can and can't do. We can't do that. Go write the legislation however you'd like to, but it's not that it was impossible for people to know that this is coming.
What we talking, 7 or 8 companies?
Total?
Yeah.
16, 17.
Okay, so.
But some of them only have one app.
Okay,
So
so
Electric City is the good one.
even still, 17 letters. I'd like to recommend that the legal office send it out and we go to the end of the year.
Ms. Brazel?
So, Mr. Palacico, I know you may not know off the top of your head, but when we passed the legislation, I believe the wording, we just capped the number of medallions in the legislation. I don't think new companies need to come before the council for approval, correct? I just want to make sure you guys have the right information, because I think we just held it at a certain number of medallions. But, so I believe it's your discretion on where, once if we had empty medallions, where they go, correct?
Yeah, all the legislation did was cap the maximum number that can be issued at any one time.
The other thing I think, if I remember correctly, that we put in there, did we limit the number of, or put a hold on the number of one-car companies? I remember that was a conversation. So I guess we need to review the legislation and make sure everybody knows exactly what our parameters are, because we did pass it some time ago, and now we've had some movement, right? We didn't have any movement for a while, but we have the landscape has changed.
Apparently, these companies will call here and they talk to the mayor's office, and the mayor's office, according to them, tells them no more medallions are issued to new companies. So it's not us telling them, we go by whatever happens here.
So we'll make sure, we'll know.
Should I add to that?
What?
I'm not aware of the mayor's office giving out that information, but the number of medallions is set, Carl, correct me if I'm wrong, by council legislation?
60, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So who approves the new ones? You guys, yes.
We just need to make sure they have the information that they need.
Correct.
So at this point, we're talking about extending the,
To December
to the end of the
31st.
year, December 31st.
Let's put a date in there.
So normally the medallions, we do them in April because we wait for the weather to wait, because we're not going to do it in the middle of winter. So it usually goes April to April. If you you guys are good with that, because I'll give them the medallions now, because we're the ones that go through the cars. And then they'll be good till next April. And then next April,
There's one number right there.
So,
Because they're $500 per medallion.
yeah.
so then we get it extended.
So they're really getting a year.
Technically, it's not, it's January to January, but it's April to April because of the weather.
No, I get it. More than enough time.
Yeah,
So they've got.
if they can't get a new car by that time, I mean,
All right, well, we'll put 12/31, but they really have to put April, so.
right.
Well, Ms. Brown.
And in the meantime, though, we're still inspecting them, so even if they're told, we know they're safe, we know.
Oh, yeah,
They have a New York State inspection
Yeah.
as well as a secondary inspection.
And we go through them with tires, seat belts, you name it, I mean, we go through the whole thing.
Very good.
Most of them are actually in pretty good shape.
So we have a fail-safe measure so that even though we're doing this, they don't pass, then you just take them off the road anyway.
Correct, because I held up 4 cabs from Electric City that didn't pass.
Okay.
The tires were bald.
Very good. Excellent. Good work.
Yes.
We're good with 12/31. Just one last question, then. So somebody that wants to get a medallion, when can they get it? That's.
If you guys are good with it, I'll let them have them now, as long as you guys are good with it.
I mean, if they're available.
We have extra medallions. But again, these people are telling me that, no, the mayor said no more, so I don't know what.
That's not the mayor's prerogative, but I understand city
So
council.
I can, there's only 2 new companies. There's only one left in Central Brown and All-Star, I believe.
We're out of business.
Okay, Ms.
Well,
Brown.
Which Central Brown, I used to work for Central Brown.
Excuse me, excuse me.
Cheryl had said that there was a list of approved cab companies that apply through the mayor's office. And Cheryl's pretty knowledgeable as far as all the restrictions that go with the cab companies. So maybe it's not written somewhere and that was past practice or whatever, because there has been a lot of turnover. But I'll check with her tomorrow morning and see, what her understanding is.
Okay.
And can I just ask Corporation Council to review the legislation and communicate to the officers as to exactly how the legislation reads and what parameters they need to operate in?
Any questions you guys have, give us a call anytime, we can get this week and go through it, and,
Because I know,
draft.
I remember we put some different things in there, so they should know.
Remember something about the
Yeah.
single car
Single
cabs, I
right.
don't remember exactly what we did.
Right.
So just to be clear, did your office did you get a copy of the legislation?
Yes, I have it.
Okay, you, all right, you have it.
Yeah, Carl provided it to us.
Okay. So we're going to extend till December 31st, but they really haven't until April. Essentially what it was. Well, that's what we're just going to April.
Then why do we go to April?
It makes sense to me to go to April, or rather than March 31st.
March, yes.
That's fine.
March 31st.
So you don't have to,
Everybody should be down, right?
So we're gonna make it till April?
No, March 31st, 2020.
Well, so Mr. Reedy, what they're saying is, even if we extend it until December, they're not going to do any inspections until weather break, so March 31st. So it equals out of the same thing, so we're just going to put
The
that.
cab's gonna be safe, they assured us that, that's the bottom.
Right.
That's the same for our customers. Yeah.
And the cabs that are not safe are going to be taken off the road anyway.
Very good.
Yes.
The inspections will be done when the legislation that you pass and the mayor signs says it will be done. So why don't you pick the day you want the inspections to be done, and we look at cars when the weather's cold, and we do it when the weather's hot. So just pick when you want it, I would not recommend you put the date in there that you know is not going to be followed.
Why can't we just prorate the medallions?
So, is everyone in agreement with March 31st as the date, or is there? Yes.
Yes, March 31st, 2020.
So,
2020.
so we're going to amend the legislation, and we're going to extend it to March 31st, 2020. Right?
Well, I think actually what we're doing is we're introducing resolution, legislation that is going to amend the legislation in place and I was happy to make a motion.
Yes.
Second.
We're amending the legislation.
We're amending legislation to extend the period until until March 31st.
To purchase the vehicle.
But this is only the time for the cars, not the rate that we set.
No, this is just for the cars. For them to purchase cars that are, for the cars in there to be 10 years old or less. That's the only thing that would happen. So, all right, all those in favor?
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a nice thing to get.
So, second item on the agenda is for a ceremonial resolution for Richard Shave, Schenectady County Honor Veteran. Mr. Ricky.
Yes, Bob Shea, sadly passed away right after Memorial Day.
Yep.
He's my friend and neighbor, and I think it's be a nice thing to have a ceremony on June 1st, because he has a dog that's coming from either Illinois or Michigan, so she's going to be June 1st at St. Luke's Parish.
You all got a letter today. Chuck forwarded that email this afternoon.
The move that we presented.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Is there anything else to come before?
Just one thing, make sure the language isn't exactly the same resolution as the mayor's. We can't call it Bob Shave Day. We have it in the legislation that we had for the last.
Oh, yes, yes.
Although the mayor can proclaim. Okay.
At least the last paragraph.
Clear up, yep.
All right. Are you? Okay, so you moved it? All those in favor? Aye.
What consent agenda? Yeah, we can't, the council can't declare Robert Shave's Day, so I don't think we did that in our resolution.
It was.
We did.
They had that in there too?
Yeah.
That it was about his day?
Yeah.
Really?
Courtney's like that too.
That's why when we read it, we just left it in the mayor's resolution.
Yeah.
Just like that.
All right, so we'll make sure.
We'll just make sure on that.
Anything else to come before our public service and utilities?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Good. Where do we want to go?
Okay, what's next?
So, the finance.
Next item on the agenda is a budget reallocation for fuel. He's not up yet. Mr. Ferrari.
Fuel.
Mr. President, Council, all we're trying to do here is reallocate the budget. It's has no effect on the budget at all. All we're doing is moving it to the single account like we're doing with the vehicle maintenance program. What this is going to help us do is going to help the department able to process the billing for the gas the fuel company on a more timely manner, whereas right now it's taking them too long to figure out the percentages for each individual department, which is causing a 1.5% addition of interest. So we're trying to avoid that by putting it all in one account like we do with the maintenance program, and then the different bureaus will be receiving their costs of what they use their usage monthly by the bureau service. So we're just trying to expedite the payment process.
Are there any questions?
So right now, each department gets a bill, has to approve it, and you're gonna do it the other way around. You're gonna get the bill, and you're gonna do it, and you're gonna allocate back?
Correct.
Okay. I got it.
Just like we do with the vehicle maintenance.
No, that's fine.
Are there any other questions?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Thank you. Next item is Mr. Lund with transferring position to a full-time clerical aide.
Thank you, Council. So this position, we have Unicity coming up, and what we're going to do is have the ability to have officers in the field longer. Currently, officers are out in the field for approximately 4 hours a day, 3 hours back in the office. So by increasing 12 officers over the course of a week, that's 60 hours. This will give us more work done. So we're going to take the position that you granted me in the last budget for a code officer, and we want to turn this into an administrative position. We want to do more dispatching of the officers, and there's also going to be more work coming back in with officers out. So we need somebody back in the office to field phone calls and dispatch the officers we do have. Like I said, there'll be a savings of not only decreased paid position, from a code officer, but one less car in our fleet that we would need, and tablet and phone. So there's an ongoing savings by going in this direction.
Are there any questions? Mr. Kosher.
So this municity that we have, we still do not have the capability of this laptop from the car connecting to our computers in-house? We still have to download them manually, is from what I understand, or?
So right now we use Munis. Munis does not have the capability to be live in the field. Municity, which real confusing, close name.
Yeah.
Municity is coming in a couple weeks here, and that will be live in the field. They'll be able to do more work in the field. They'll be in touch with all the past violations on properties, permitting, and they'll be able to, in real time, pass or fail an inspection in the field. That failure or notice of violation that's created will then be sent automatically back into my office here. And the administrative staff will get the notice. The mailings will go out automatically with the officer's signatures already on it, so it's going to save a lot of time. Currently, we do a posting, we go back to the office, we fill out, we go back out and post that notice that's printed here in the office. Eventually, we're going to have the in-car printers that's coming in this phase coming up within, I would say, hopefully within 6 months, where they'll be printing the actual notice right there. Currently, the policies and procedures that we're going to change is they're going to post it out of their packet right off of what the tablet says, and then mailing will go out. So it's going to be really good.
So these are going to be new tablets, or
so
we're utilize what we currently have?
We're going to utilize what we have, but we've got a larger staff. We did budget, and I bought new tablets for the officers that needed them. So we're going to use the old ones as long as we possibly can.
And there's certainly training has been involved or will be involved with all this.
So a couple weeks ago, the general code came in Municity, and we went through a week-long training of administrative staff and the code officers.
That's exciting. Very
Yeah,
exciting.
no, it's great stuff.
It's good stuff. Yeah. I think that's one of the pieces we're missing, is that technology piece.
Yeah, it's going to save a lot. We're going to get more inspections. It's hard to quantify how many inspections we can possibly get out of this, but each inspection takes a different amount of time. But if you had that 60 hours of actual field time with officers in the field, it's a great savings to the city.
Good job, Chris.
Are there any other questions, Mr. Reedy?
Yes, Chief Lund, you're very confident Municity is going to do the job for us, because I'm hearing pros and cons with it from some people.
Yeah, I think there's going to be growing pains with any system that we go with, and the needs of the Schenectady is greater than, let's say, Amsterdam and Gloversville that's in this, together. We have landlord registrations, rental certificates, a vacant program. So I'm very confident in that they have worked very hard to generate the product that we need. So I'm not going to give up on it, and I think that we push forward to make this happen. So yeah, it's definitely it's going to work.
So I'm sorry. So is this the same program that Albany, Troy, Amsterdam are all working collaboratively on this one?
Gloversville, Amsterdam, yeah, right, Troy, yeah.
So we're not alone, that was correct.
So there's different, there's two parts. There's information sharing between the communities, and that's the second part of this. So The first part is to get us all technical, on the same platform and citing violations in the same manner, and that way the reporting becomes, we can see what reporting is. Everybody's doing. Yeah, what everybody's doing. Very good.
A motion?
So moved. Second by Mrs. Zaluski-Lazunas, all in favor? Aye. Thank you. The last item on the agenda will be held for 2 weeks, so can I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. Zaluski-Lazunas, Mr. Mudavera, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Health and Right. Call to order, Health and Right. We have one item up for discussion. Clean up that part for Bellevue, League, and some other parts. Mr. Riggi had asked for this to be added to the agenda because of the complaints we have received from these parks.
Unfortunately, Mr. LaFond, we knew was going to be here, but the mayor's not here yet, and it's really question, so I guess we'll be holding it again. But I think we certainly have to address the situations on 4th Street Field. One way or another, there's the parks, whether there's something, we need more boots on the ground.
Bless you.
So, I assume we'll hold this for 2 weeks when we
Yes.
get some answers.
Yeah, I thought
But I think it'd be nice, we get a heads up on who's going to be here to address this, since the summer, we're going to be in June, and people deserve it.
Unfortunately, we'll have to hold this for 2 weeks and bring it back, and we'll have to ask the mayor and answer all right, thank you.
For somebody from the parks.
Somebody from the forest, this is not here.
Somebody here, send somebody else, that's okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Second.
Thank you.
Goodness, what kind of rush.
Thank you.
Very quick on administrative efficiency, discussion of the plastic bag. Listen, I have some tremendous great news here. John DeAugustine sent me an email on Friday that they're in the process of moving the papers back to mailing everything, and it should be completed over the next few weeks. The town of Niskayuna also had the same email sent to them from John, so we are very pleased that working together actually works. We sent several emails to both John and to...
We have to know the time Junior did it first.
Well, since Paul is here, the TU is actually dropping them off on our doorstep. They are not mailing them, but they're actually now where we live.
But they were dropping them.
They were as well. But again, some good communication and good response from both of our papers. We appreciate it because, again, the Facebook posts and the emails I was getting were very upsetting to a lot of folks. And again, thank you to John and the Mouse Reef and the Gazette. Again, it's going to take a few weeks, so folks, just please be patient, but it will be achieved. All right? Anything else to come before committee? Let's just make sure you're adjourned. John, Karen, all in favor, say aye. Thank you. That meeting is adjourned.
All right, city planning and development, I think Kristen has left. So I'm gonna table.
That's only,
What is this?
that's only for the public hearing.
Public hearing, okay. All right, so just a reminder of the public hearing and the sidewalk petitions.
I reviewed the sidewalk petitions that were provided to me by the city clerk's office. Of the 3 petitions, there are 2 that I'm recommending you to continue the process on, that I think meet the qualification or the requirements under the city charter and under legislation we passed. There's one that a number of the signatures came from people who are not registered owners of the property, but like looking to them a little bit more because specific details of it outside of the camp, the ones that were primarily on the Camp Avenue and Ardsley Road are the 2 that I think are ready for the next step.
And next step is?
Public hearing by the council.
Okay, so for public hearing. We already did, so we can vote.
No, we have the public hearing on Monday.
Oh.
And then we have that Wednesday.
Okay.
But question, who's,
Mike did.
yes, Karen, didn't we have to do something with the addresses too, Carl? We had to be specific with what addresses or what blocks we're covering?
That's
Or is that?
that's something I can look at and talk, but there's, it's not something that hurts the validity of petitions.
Correct.
It's just defining the scope of the district that they're looking for the sidewalks to be improved on. You either draw a line around the specific house we have here, but I'll, just look into that and we'll come up with a document to formalize what it is that the public hearing should be done on.
Right, so pretty specific. Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Motion to recess.
Second. It's been a long day. Yeah, so we could,
Oh, we have claims, oh, I didn't know.
all right, so,
Good one, good one.
huh?
Aye.
Recess.
Thank God we're off for a couple of weeks.
All right, so you want to open claims first and call executive session?
Call to order claims.
Oh, yeah.
Motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Board of Appeals, Mr. Perez, all those in favor?
Aye.
Six.
If you don't mind, please, breaking one first. Our old friend, Mr. Bailey, is here to present on that. Breaking one of the last
That's the only one.
Oh, he's on
And that next change is well,
That's another name, now city's own.
and that next change is